Okay, we're finally going. Thanks, Ryan.
No problem. Okay, so as you probably recall from the email, the main goal of this conversation is just to discuss, as we transition into the next iteration of extension, we're still figuring out what all that looks like, that I think we're presented with an opportunity to delve a little bit more into food systems and urban agriculture work. And my hope would be that we could do that in a way that's as synchronized as possible and as complementary as possible, and to be able to provide structured support for urban agriculture, food systems, beginning farmer programming. And today we just want to get a sense of what colleagues are doing across the state already, what good work that's happening, and how we can support that work, how we can team up to support one another's work. And it's a pretty informal conversation, or just a start to a conversation of what that may look like, what some of the greatest needs are that we've assessed in our different areas of the state, and how Extension can respond to those needs. So does everybody, you're able to see I think Greg has the agenda posted there on his screen. So we'll start just really quickly with introductions, who you are, what county you're in, how your work relates to food systems or agriculture in some capacity, just real briefly. So I'll go first. Ryan Shoney in Milwaukee County, UW Extension. I work with the Urban Ag program, and we've also done quite a bit of food systems work over the past several years, from supporting beginning farmers to starting a variety of different community urban gardens and doing programming for those gardens. Right now we're focusing on a cross-programming initiative that incorporates all program areas of Milwaukee County's office into these different urban agriculture sites. So whoever wants to go next, we'll just go down the list. Jump in.
I'll go. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Piat. I coordinate the Extension statewide community food systems team. And recently, my work has really been focused on thinking about what our future community and regional food systems program will look like. So I want to make sure that urban food systems has a lot of support, and hopefully we can build an organizational structure to support that. So I'm excited for the conversation. Thanks for organizing it, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Greg Lawless with, gosh, I don't know where I am exactly. We're all in transition, but food system work on the community food system team, and we've been interested in urban ag since we got this AFRI Community Regional Food System grant several years ago. Got to know Will Allen's operation fairly well over those years, but also things in Detroit and other cities. And I'm pretty open-minded about it. I like hearing criticisms, because I think that, it's helpful to think about that. But I am generally in favor of continuing to explore this and help people develop their ideas of it. Rhonda?
Rhonda Lee. I'm in the new Program Support Services unit that is being formed as we speak. Our new director is Jenna Klink, who was the co-director of the Environmental Resources Center, and has really done an amazing job regional evaluation work. She's maybe the only person I know who's ever gotten all 12 North Central states to evaluate a curriculum, for example. So there's going to be a lot more opportunity for practice and evaluative thinking from program support services. And probably we will use community food systems and aspect of it. People have been fabulous at reporting it through the years. Especially the team reports have been just terrific. And there's maybe some work that we can wrap up and also preview with the federal report this year.
Thanks, Rhonda.
This is Kristen. I can go. So I don't specifically work just in urban food systems, but a lot of the folks that I work with serve the urban audience. So I work mainly in the areas of kind of like with vegetable and fruit growers primarily, although also work quite a bit with some folks who are doing startups and kind of green industry stuff. Mostly in the areas of production, business plan, risk management, and then I also work statewide with the farmers markets around the state and the Wisconsin Farmers Market Association, and do quite a bit of work in cooperation with Department of Health and Fondy Food Center and some other folks around the state in food access.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Vijay Pandian from the Brown County UW Extension Office. So we are actually exploring the urban farming program in Brown County because we are seeing a lot of growing interest among the county resident folks who want to get into small scale level of farming here. We are seeing a growing interest in a lot of vendors popping into the farmers market, growing like small scale type of vegetables and fruits and all the other type of allied type of fruit production system. So we are just currently doing some need assessment and see actually what level of interest is there prevailing in our county. We are trying to develop us more like a team type of program right up here. My colleague Margaret, she's also heavily involved in the community garden programs, and she has a lot of good network connections in the community. Karen Early, she's with the nutrition program. Judy Knudsen with the family living and also department head. So we are kind of putting our heads together and trying to explore actually about this program.
Great. Thank you. Looks like we got a whole team of 4 there that maybe we could knock out. 3 or 4 at least.
I see Dennis is on the line, telephone, maybe. Eloise is there, maybe.
Dennis? Folks, you want to go first? I'll go after.
Dennis?
Go ahead, Eloise. I think Dennis is maybe having some technical.
Okay, well, I'm Eloisa Gomez, and I'm the AED person from Milwaukee County. I've been fortunate to be connected to a number of you over the years as it relates to urban programming and micro-farming and community gardens. We have quite a bit of county, quite a bit of county land that supports over 500 families that Dennis will speak to, and Ryan as well. I don't know if I sent to you the nightly business report from December 5th, and I can forward that to you because it had a wonderful quick segment on millennials becoming, greater numbers becoming micro farmers, and I'd love to share that with you. And I really think that that was kind of a really good piece to share that there's this growth in the area of micro farming, and I'm really glad UW Extension has been a part of that effort. And our office in Brown County, Dane County, and other counties, Waukesha, it's very exciting. I look forward to working with you all further on this.
Thanks, Eloisa. Dennis, Judy and team, others on the phone?
Are you having trouble, Karen?
Is there a button that mutes phones?
Yeah, actually,
We're muted.
yeah, BJ reported for the Brown County group, so there's 4 of us here.
Okay.
I mean, I can add with Brown County that FoodWise has been involved with food systems work with some of the other topics we're going to be talking about over the years, because we used to have grants to do some of that. And more recently, a lot of our work, of course, is with the food pantries and bringing fresh produce there, which they didn't used to be open to, but now they are, and looking for more opportunities for that. Hi, Kristen. We've worked with the EBT program together years ago.
Great. All right, so let's go on to number 2 in the agenda and just talk a little bit about how do we understand urban agriculture and food systems. How can the two complement one another? Are they entirely different things? I don't want to get very far in the weeds in terms of coming up with this perfect definition. That's not what this conversation is about. But just so we can kind of have common language when we're discussing urban agriculture and food systems work. How does everyone here perceive that? What is urban agriculture? What does that encompass, or what does food systems encompass? Are those two, would urban agriculture fall under food systems? What do folks think?
I guess I'll start talking just to kill the dead air. So for me, urban agriculture, it's kind of tricky because you have this kind of balance between, for me personally, urban agriculture and agriculture in general means you're selling something. So it's a business, and it's a agricultural business in an urban area. So it's produce or whatever's being grown for sale to a consumer, and that, or bartered with, I guess, technically. And then I think of urban gardening as kind of a separate thing, as kind of a in an urban area, but gardening for your family or for your family neighbors, or something where it's not really sold, but it's kind of a community resource, a community food product. And I would say both of those fit under food systems. I think food systems is a much broader umbrella of interconnectedness within the food. It covers everything from transportation to sale to growing, just everything that has to do with food. And I think the one thing we kind of need to be cognizant of is how the new model separates these out, and how the new model looks at them and places them in the different centers. So I think at some point we just need to kind of think about that, and think about how you build something, how you kind of acknowledge that they're based in different centers, and how to interconnect those in a way that works.
Great. Yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise to me that the food systems portion got placed in the community economic development side rather than the agriculture side. So I think it's important to look at how we can bridge those two different areas.
Yeah, and I think the goal of that was to separate the community development aspects that a lot of people use in food systems, and the idea of supporting industry and developing businesses, and to separate that out from the science of growing things. So I think, and the other tricky part is that home urban gardening, or urban gardening that's not for sale, falls in the horticulture center, and urban gardening that is for sale is crops and soils. So we're really dealing with 3 different centers here.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts or insights on that? Like I said, it's really not, I don't want to go too in depth on this, but I just wanted to kind of to bring it up to see what varying opinions, insights folks had.
This is Eloise. I just wanted to ask if anyone could summarize last Wednesday's discussion, because I understood that there was a food systems group when we broke into groups at the Dells. Could somebody just kind of summarize what happened at that meeting? Because I think that's pertinent to, I think, our discussion right now.
Unless I missed it, Eloisa, I don't think that there was a community food system breakout. There was the Center for Community and Economic Development. Is that what it's called, Erin? Same name as CCED currently has?
Yeah, I think it's the program, the new program will be in the Center for Community Development, I think.
But there wasn't any standalone discussion about community food systems in the Dells, was there?
No, not that I know of. I was at the same one you were, and it was based at it was the Center for Community Development, and food systems was brought up, but there wasn't a discussion, an in-depth discussion about it.
The most in-depth it got was around the question of interdisciplinarity.
Okay, that's interesting, because I heard differently from somebody who was there, so I don't know what that was about. But Kristen, which one from Brown County, did people go to that one, or for Urban Ag, or did you go to the Hort?
I went to Crops and Soils because Crops and Soils is where all the commercial fruit and vegetable production falls. So anybody who's growing for farmers markets or for sale, it all falls into Crops and Soils. And so that's where I ended up for the first one, and the second one I went to horticulture.
I went to the horticulture team meeting for the both session.
So that, I think that's kind of revealing too. We've got three sort of different areas. You know, how do you develop urban ag and the food system, larger food systems, when we're kind of dispersed, and maybe it's not problematic, but from a layperson's point of view, I'm not sure how this gets operationalized. Maybe somebody has a better sense of that.
Well, and I'll just throw out that before Dave Williams left, he encouraged me to stop working with farmers markets and food access. He said that wasn't going to fall under the Ag Institute anymore, that the kind of support and assistance I offer farmers markets was really community development work, and that I should look for a way to hand that off, or to look for something else to move into and focus more on other things like the Food Safety Modernization Act that I work on, and to try to transition my work into more science-based growing practices, pest management, things like that, and not into the community development aspects of local agriculture.
Well, I think this, I don't know if we could go off the specific urban ag topic if we're not too careful, but they've resliced the pie, in extension, and I don't know where even rural farmer marketing goes anymore. That's what I've been doing all along, is related to creative marketing approaches, cooperatives, food processing, direct market, CSAs. I don't know where that falls anymore. If it's not in Hort, it's probably going to be grabbed by the community food system program, community and regional food system program. So I have a feeling that, the one beauty of working in academia is no matter what boundaries they put up, you can work outside them. And I think they expect us to be a systems team and not get too caught up in these boundaries.
That's what I understood, Greg, is that these aren't supposed to be walls. The centers aren't supposed to be walls.
No, and Greg, I didn't mean to say that. I just think that we're going to each be expected to work within our specialty within our institute and collaborate with people who do specialty work in others, So what they're encouraging me to do was not do community development work, but to do science, the agricultural production side of it, and to team up with other people who do the community development aspects of it. So we're supposed to partner and kind of attack this community food systems thing as a team, but come at it with our own specialties and our own developed expertise. Does that make sense?
Does anyone else have any final thoughts about this? I think we'll move on and kind of hear what folks are doing as it relates to urban ag / food systems work, if not.
Well, I guess I just want to throw out there, I mentioned this in our phone call, Brian. I mean, to some people, especially it was more hyped up 5 years ago, but urban agriculture includes all kinds of indoor systems and aquaponics and vertical agriculture and a lot of things like that. And I know Michelle Miller, who wanted to be on this call, but we kept it extension focused, is a voice of criticism for some of those systems for their, energy sustainability issues, economic feasibility issues. And I don't think we have to decide whether vertical indoor agriculture is part of urban ag or not. I don't think we have to decide that, but it is kind of an issue out there. Ryan, you work more with people who are growing in the ground outside, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe the folks in Green Bay. I mean, this meeting happened partly because Dave Williams, one of his last things was to, he encouraged Ryan and I to reach out and find out, what's going on in Green Bay. There seems to be some interest there, and maybe that's what we can get to next in terms of. I'd really like to hear more about. I understand there was some city policies or some kind of city support for urban ag, and I'm curious to see how they define it.
Here in Green Bay and Brown County area, there is certainly a lot of growing interest in indoor farming. We're seeing few folks entered into aquaponic system, and I do see a couple of growers into hydroponic system. So there's a lot of interest in those kind of things. In fact, our technical college here is also thinking about exploring to offer those type of programs too. So, and there is a lot of media buzz about that too. That also further geared up a lot of interest among the county residents and all these young people to explore into that. So, in fact, our Oneida reservation folks also sought extensions help in a few months ago about starting an aquaponics, and they got some grant actually for that too. So there is a lot of interest here in the Green Bay area. Like I said to you guys before, people are exploring this option, and so from my perspective, I kind of vision both the indoor farming also part of this urban farming system too. It's not just strictly outdoor type of thing. Because I see some of the growers have also branched out to start more into hydroponics too, so that they can extend their cropping system. They can even grow actually early in the season. So I think that is a bit of a lot of benefit also in that too.
Yeah, a couple more things along with Vijay's comment, and someone else mentioned about the number of millennials who are interested in food production, urban ag. We have some people who are starting a CSA just by using little plots of land in town. We have more young people who are looking at doing some kind of a CSA. We have people who are trying to do more things in their yards, which has caused some issues because our city really doesn't have ordinance for how to handle complaints from residents if there are non-traditional growing mechanisms going on in the yard. Consequently, they've used other guidance that they've had on the books to try to enforce things, and there has been some hard feelings and really not good situations as a result. So the city's looking at what do we need to do? Do we need to develop ordinances? Do we need to have discussions and put it into our long-term comprehensive plan for urban agriculture? I shared with them what Minneapolis had done. I know they looked at that. They were going to have an open hearing, and they decided now to do a survey instead. The only reason I got drawn in is because of my long-term involvement with community gardens. So Extension has kind of wondered, how much we really want to be involved with that at this time, because there's been it's been really controversial and some really hard feelings. Does that summarize that? Yeah, but certainly, we would have some, we could offer some valuable perspectives, I think, based on research and what other communities had done, if we were having a forum for having that kind of knowledge.
Brown County, have you guys set any sort of parameters for, at this point, what you want to focus on, who you want to help and who you think is outside of your auspices of being able to help, or you're still trying to navigate, how you're going to lend your support and time?
Well, Ryan, at this moment, we are focusing primarily only on fruit and vegetable crop producers, actually. We are not getting into the marketing, processing, and those kind of things at this moment. So we're trying to understand the needs and the challenges these folks are facing in growing fruits and vegetables, and commercializing it. So, that's a piece we are focusing on right now at this moment. And who knows, maybe down the road we might further expand, because this is an industry. It's pretty diverse, as you know. There might be some people who are more into mushroom production, and who knows what else is going to coming down the pipe. So even this morning, my department had mentioned that's also about snail production and things like that. So unfortunately, I'm not expert in all those kind of things. Say, based on the resources that we have currently, I think we are comfortable in focusing primarily on, fruit and vegetable type of growers in this area.
This is kind of, new for us to all be talking, together about things too. And, Foodwise has had a change. It's ever changing in what kind of role that we have. Previously, before we had a lot of restrictions, I did a lot of work with the Hmong population. And as a result, we had a large USDA grant, and we had built a commercial kitchen with federal dollars. And we had 30 people who wanted food micro enterprise development. We did have success in that happening. We started a different farmers market, but there were several people that, even though they knew how to grow, they didn't know the business part. And so that they weren't able to move forward. So we know historically that there was a piece that we weren't able to serve, and there really wasn't anybody else to do it. As a result, we have a federally funded commercial kitchen that's really beautiful, that's totally underutilized. And there's some peripheral conversations on what, might be able to happen with that. So lots of moving pieces. I mean, even the food pantries working together to want to have maybe some cooperative cold storage so that they can have fresh produce once a week. So, getting our arms around opportunities and resources.
And just to add one more thing, one other thing we've talked about is kind of size that we would consider part of this as well. So what we've narrowed it down to, at least in the survey that we're doing, is between 1 and 30 acres. But I mean, I think that's something that we would talk about in the future as well. I mean, a lot of people are growing at much smaller spaces as well as bigger ones.
So for the, just to clarify, I understand that there were some funds that were distributed from the county government, I believe, to work with, particularly focused on beginning farmers, right? Or
Actually,
urban ag in general?
So actually, the county pays half of Margaret's salary, and the remainder, or they pay a little bit more than half, and the remainder comes from the city of Green Bay. The county exec just hosted a press conference to announce this initiative on urban farming. But at this point, we haven't put any money into that. I think this first year for 2018, we really need to assess need. We need to have lots of conversations. And then I think we can have a conversation with the county about perhaps putting some dollars towards this. But at this point, we're too new into this part of it to have somebody designated just to do urban farming or to work on urban agriculture. So we have a ways to go. And so, like I said, we're at the very, very start. For
Okay.
this. Community gardens we've been doing for over 20 years. So we have a lot of history with community gardens, but since this is new and different, we want to be very thoughtful and do that needs assessment and talk to a lot of people before we jump too fast.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I came to realize that in this county, we never had this type of program. Trying to build a relationship, and that's going to be a biggest challenge for us, because we're seeing a lot of new people coming into the market in this program, and there are a lot of other established urban farmers in the county too. So trying to meet them, build a relationship. Hey, we are here to provide you guys resources. Tell us what's your needs and things like that. I think that's a more critical piece. We're hoping that we were able to get connected with some growers. We're hoping to have a steering committee put together, and with the help of the steering committee, we might think about having some sort of like a listening session. And also, we already developed an educational need assessment. We want to further marketize and publicize this need assessment and get a lot of people on board with that. So that's going to take quite a bit of time on our end, actually try to understand the needs in this county.
Okay, do we want to maybe have everyone else briefly share what sort of work that they're doing related to urban ag food systems in roughly 2 minutes? I can go. So in Milwaukee County, right now my time is split between doing several different UW Extension-based projects, and then also I'm working through Extension and a partnership with an organization called Journey House in the Clark Square neighborhood of Milwaukee, which is on the near south side. We're doing a food systems initiative focused in that neighborhood. On the Extension side, I mentioned the community gardening. We did a Seed Milwaukee program that started last year, 2016, and we started 8 new sites. And with that, a big part of it was integrating all program areas of Milwaukee County Extension's office. So FoodWise would come and do cooking demonstrations and nutrition classes for both adults and youth. 4-H Youth Development began partnerships with some of our site-based community partner organizations, like on the north side in Moody Park, COA. They started doing programming with them, or on the south side with Journey House. And then horticulture, our Master Gardener volunteers offered some free gardening classes to beginning gardeners at the different garden sites. And it's become kind of a platform to integrate many different areas, program areas, as they exist now, into this thing that we called Seed Milwaukee. And it was established with one-time funds from Milwaukee County to work around increasing access to healthy food for residents in Milwaukee County, particularly in areas that were perceived to be low access areas, or the buzz term food deserts. Along with that, a lot of my work right now at Journey House, I'm working with multiple different schools, integrating food systems, gardening, environmental curriculum directly with teachers. We're doing green infrastructure work, taking a 42,000 square foot playground and turning it into interactive green space, which includes gardening, and making that kind of a model within NPS, hopefully for other schools to be able to adapt and to teach kids at a younger age. This is a K-8 school, to get them involved in understanding gardening and food in a very hands-on sort of way. And then lastly, working on a nonprofit cafe training program that we would be training young adults to prepare food, and specifically focusing on local food, to do training in the culinary arts and food service industry. And so looking at that as a opportunity for entrepreneurial income, out and job creation. It incorporates food systems from different levels of community development and access to healthy food, particularly for people in lower income demographics. But then it also looks at the sustainable agriculture of utilizing produce that comes from local farmers and being able to support them by purchasing their products. And then we're also doing a SARE compost project that is aimed at increasing access and affordability for compost, as well as increasing the demand for compost. And from that SARE funded project that Greg is involved with, myself and around half a dozen different commercial composters in the Milwaukee region, we're taking different approaches to look at how we can increase production as well as demand, because the two kind of have to level out. But we've, in moving on to year 2 of this project, looked at it as an opportunity to say, well, in order to increase demand, a big cohort of the demand comes from our local farmers. And so how can we help local farmers be successful so that their demand for compost will theoretically rise? I don't know if you wanted to add anything else on that project.
No, except that I just know, Madison is struggling through a lot of the same issues and challenges and has a lot of the same goals. And as I always say, the two cities should be working together, and of course they're not. But I guess I do think that is one thing that we can kind of think about as we're talking about all this, is how can we connect Green Bay, Milwaukee, Madison, and at some point we have to define urban at what point, in terms of population. But it raises a question to me of can we somehow draw some links between cities through this topic we're on today? Kind of a coalition of cities. Waukesha. Don't want to leave out Waukesha.
I think that would be useful, just from my brief conversations with the city of Green Bay, to be able to know what other cities are doing, even in defining, urban gardening and urban agriculture, and how it gets regulated, what kind of guidances. Are they in ordinances? Are they in long-term comprehensive plans? What process do they use to get it there? And how can we help inform that process?
Kristen, do you have any? Are you still looking for reports, Ryan?
Yeah.
I can go. I didn't know if Brown County was going to continue on, but so I just do some of the regular stuff, production and farm business and risk management, related stuff, kind of on a as needed basis, trying to make sure that growers are aware of changes in regulations and changes in, especially right now, things around good agricultural practices and the Food Safety Modernization Act, because it's created some new hurdles for some of our smaller growers, and they need to know the rules and the parameters of how to operate their farms and who they can sell to and things like that, to make sure that they don't fall under the full Food Safety Modernization Act rule. We also do community gardens here in the county. Ann Weed is in charge of those, but really the bulk of what I do personally has to do with the Wisconsin Farmers Market Association and working with farmers markets statewide. And the goal of that, and the whole reason I got started in that, was to improve access to good quality farmers markets. My kind of end game has always been to increase the profitability of our farmers. That's one of the biggest challenges we have with market growers, is that, the wages are really low, and it's really hard for people to earn a living wage doing that. So one of the things that I've been working on is developing farmers markets and making sure market managers know how to run a market, know how to promote a market, know how to follow the rules and do what they need to do to make sure that they have good quality markets for farmers to go and sell at, so they can actually make money. And part of that whole piece has always been the food access. Not only trying to grow access for people for healthy food, but to also put that money in the pockets of local farmers so that it helps them too. So it's kind of a win-win situation with the food access.
Ryan, can I ask Kristen a question?
Yeah.
I mean, you've worked around the state. I mean, you've dealt with farmers markets all over the state through your work. And, when we talk about cities versus towns, or small cities versus larger cities, are there farmers markets operating in say cities smaller than, I'll just say 40,000? Are there farmers markets that are notably good and serious amount of traffic and do provide that opportunity for profitability in really much smaller cities, 25, 30,000 or less? Or they tend to be concentrated in really our bigger urban areas?
No, there are definitely growers. It's just a question of if it's a full-time job kind of wage. So I would say probably at least 40% of our growers that are at farmers markets, maybe more than that, are doing it as a second job or on the side or as a part-time supplemental income to another person who's working in the household. So it might be a stay-at-home mom who's doing it to supplement the income so that she can be a stay-at-home mom, or it might be somebody who has a disability and they can do this and go to the market and just do like raspberry season or something like that. So we have a lot of growers who are part-time or on-the-side growers. And then we have the other growers who are trying to do it as a living and trying to do it as part of a primary part of their family support. So I would say more of the folks that are in urban areas are doing that, full-time wage kind of a job, but there are quite a few people who do it as a substantial source of income. So I don't want to judge what's an adequate income for full-time occupation, but there are quite a few people who do it as their sole source of income in places like Black River Falls or in Anago. And they're smaller areas, but they're doing it sometimes as a supplement to commercial production too, or wholesale production. It's just a question of how they diversify. I mean, most of our growers around the state just don't do farmers markets. They have to have a diversified outlets. So,
but Kristen, I wasn't really asking about the farmers.
Okay.
I'm asking about the markets. Are there good, vital,
yeah,
markets in cities smaller than 25,000 around the state?
So just with the caveat that I don't have a good understanding of population, like the city of Burlington in Racine County has an amazing market, and they really actively support probably 25 to 30 vendors. It's a really strong market. People really want to get into that market. The Oneida market that's up near Green Bay, they have a really excellent market. They work really hard to support their market and to promote their market. So there are smaller, more rural places. Of course, the market's smaller. They have fewer vendors. They have, in general, less diversity, but they're still very vibrant and very important markets, not only for the farmers, but for the communities. So, I mean, there's so many different values to farmers markets, and the community aspect is one of them. And I think that even if they're not farmer supporting, those farmers markets are really critical to the community. Did that answer it? I'm sorry if I missed it completely again.
So Kristen, along that same line, how would the Tri-County produce auction in Dalton that now Gimmeyer supported with GAP training, how would that fit in? That supported 75 farm families.
Yeah, it's completely farm families have to diversify. Markets are kind of inconsistent, so that the produce auction for the folks, especially the Amish folks, is a really important venue. The tricky thing we're running into is with the Food Safety Modernization Act. The produce at that auction, for them to be considered qualified exempt and not fall under the Food Safety Modernization Act rule, they have to sell to a buyer within 275 miles of the farm. So we're going to have to figure out some kind of tracking system to make sure that the people selling at that auction can sell to growers within 275 miles, or in theory, it can kick them into the Food Safety Modernization Act rule, which for small growers is just untenable.
It says mute. Oh, it says open.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi.
Is that considered local foods? When it's within 275 miles, is that
Sure, a lot of people say
defined
this.
as local
A lot of
foods?
people would say the state of Wisconsin, and that's a lot larger than 275 miles.
Yeah. But hi, Dennis, sorry.
Where are we in your agenda, Ryan?
Can Dennis speak?
Sure.
It actually does work. And I might add that in your email, you didn't add a number for the program ID. So we were set up in the conference room and then we couldn't get in. I went to my computer and I could hear, but apparently my microphone somehow has some issues. So I couldn't get it to work, so I snuck into Eloisa's office.
You needed a conference ID number?
And it wasn't on there, yeah. On your two emails.
Okay, my apologies.
So
We're glad
it
you're
worked okay, but my computer was messed up. So apparently there's a microphone issue because of my streaming capture on Jing did apparently not make it work properly. So sorry about that. I thought Ryan covered it pretty good though.
So nothing else to add?
And overall? Well, yeah, I'd like to say we have 48 what we call micro farmers working on 96 micro farms, which are quarter-acre plots. And of the 48, almost all are either retired or doing it part-time, including our 5-acre flower farmer who has a second shift job. But then looking at the Hmong farmers, that's a whole different set. I think they don't look at the capitalistic rules that we do and saying we're going to make as most money we can off the land, but it's more or less sustainability as far as their lifestyle goes and not so much how much money I can accumulate, which to me was when I was working at the Walker's Point farm market and I was observing that they had a lot of waste, etc. And they said, well, it doesn't really matter. They're happy selling a few things, getting together, having the essentially the celebration weekly at the farm market where they get to see each other, etc. So I'm wondering if there's not a disconnect and some of these ethnicities that are working on these farm markets. And I'm thinking they should be at this table if we're looking to find out ways to integrate education into that whole system. And then I always feel like, do I really want to mess with happiness? You know, why do I want to put my beliefs on what they think is working for them? So I had a long talk with Mr. Herr, who's our flower farmer. And it just seems like we don't really look at capitalism the same way. So I thought I'd bring that up. The other thing is, in looking at the micro farmers, I'm thinking, and then Kristen's the one that schooled me in this, is basically you're looking at low input and high value crops rather than everybody growing tomatoes and peppers. Try to find things that are not normally found they can get a few extra dollars for. And then the other thing is, I know, Kristen's been my grower for the years, and I'll miss her dearly when I retire some year. The other thing I'd like to bring up is what was not mentioned also is the woodies, the perennial plants like, was it stars, something, flowers, up in Crawford County has like 50 acres of woody ornamentals that a guy's making a really good living on. We've been trying to integrate that into the perimeters of some of our community gardens. We're talking things like dogwood, curly willow, corkscrew in the trade, things that come up every year and you don't really have to put a lot of money into it, but you can make a few dollars selling these things. Hydrangeas come to mind also. So that's pretty much. Oh, and then lastly is compost. I was talking to Greg at the meeting, and I think that's an untapped source of income. And also a great opportunity because most of the municipalities look at this leaf collection every fall as money sink and drudgery rather than an opportunity to make some cash on it. So if I was looking at something that would, what we should all gather the wagons around would be having compost systems that work in urban areas. And after talking to Greg, one thought that did come up was Greendale had the ag bag composting system, which I think it might have been Sandy Seiberg, Sandy whatever, Purple Cow. I thought that was his initiated that activity, essentially taking an ag bag, putting an air tube in, and then making compost on the site of the Greendale Municipal Yard, and then having the folks come in after they tore open the bag and everybody came in and gathered the stuff for their gardens. And I often thought, why do we not replicate that? Why did that fall by the wayside? So since then, I've been trying to get a hold of Greendale, but they're pretty short on staff apparently this time of year, order out de-icing or whatever. So I'll find out if that thing is still useful. That was like 10 years ago, but I thought that was a great idea. No smell, etc. Anyway, that's all I got.
So one common thread that I've heard is it seems like there's not a lot of clarity for working with beginning or small scale farmers in terms of giving them direction and looking at revenue diversification. You know, how can they be successful? Is it a combination between farmers markets and direct sales, CSAs, and of course it's going to completely vary by the region that they're working in. But to me, that seems to be a common area of need, is to be able to assist these small scale growers and help inform them of what at least what their options are. Does that ring true with anyone else here? Or do you think they're figuring it out pretty well on their own, or that's not really an opportunity? Or
what was that, 4 years ago, Ryan, that you started that class, the Emerging Farmer class?
Yeah.
I for the life of me, I don't know why we're not continuing that. Just because I think of the group of 20 or so that you had, 10 of them realized this is a lot of hard work and I shouldn't be doing it, without having to put a lot of investment into that failure. And I thought, to me, that was our success story, just letting people have that opportunity to do this. And then the folks that did move to the next level, they're doing very well. So it just seems like we have the template. I don't know why we can't get a couple of dollars to fund that on a statewide, because everything is pretty much the same in Wisconsin, so we could replicate that citywide. if you look at Brown County, Dane County, Fox Valley, Milwaukee, and the Racine Kenosha, and Waukesha, you certainly could package something that would get people involved, again, without a lot of investment, exploring their possibilities. And the fact that the reality is, outside of maybe one of our gardeners that is doing this to support himself, pretty much it is a part-time activity, and pretty much the market's not saturated unless you're growing, what I would call the common stuff that Kristen so eloquently told me about, the produce glut in August and September. So to avoid that pitfall, I think people need to understand that if they're creative and come up with some strategies that'll work, they can have a long-term sustainable relationship with urban agriculture. I'd be in on that, I guess is what I'm saying. I think Greg's in on that.
I'm in on that.
I'm just going to throw out, I don't know that that's unique to urban areas. I mean, there's a lot of more rural counties that have the same needs, and I'm not sure that we need to tease it out and call it urban agriculture. I think there's a ton of people in rural areas that are trying to do more food access, more nutritious eating, more community gardens, and more farm startups. And I know that the hot beginning farmer right now is veteran farmers, but there's a ton of potential funding for beginning farmers through the USDA and through SARE and through the Vets Administration right now.
If you look at the organic belt, that's probably pretty true. Up in Crawford, Vernon, Grant.
Yeah.
I think this is a related question. I always wonder, I see a lot of good programming coming out of Dane County. Dane County does more and more statewide programming, as far as I can tell. They attract people from around the state, around, production agriculture issues, but also CS, the Center for Integrated Ag Systems, runs that School for Beginning Vegetable Farmers, John Hendrickson. And we have some programs for the audience you're talking about. And yet, are urban people going to it? Are urban farmers, micro farmers, or whatever, are they attending extension or UW-Madison small farm production training?
And can that change July 1st?
Why?
Because we'll be merged with them by July 1st.
Greg, I view that as like a short course, essentially. But I think Ryan's process was once or twice a month where folks got together. And I think it was the camaraderie of them getting together had equal importance to the information that they got. Meaning that it seems, even in my, the beekeeping class I teach, where I allow them to have a half hour or more just to talk among themselves. And I'm finding great value in that peer mentoring relationships that these folks essentially organize within themselves in these classes. Maybe we just have small-scale farming clubs. Maybe we never looked at that kind of approach to it. Where then when they got all excited, then they'd come to Madison and go to a short course meeting or to the Delta, wherever these things are held.
I'm just going to throw out that we need to be cognizant that not everyone in the state wants anything to do with Madison.
What?
Madison, for a lot of people, especially within the rural parts of the state, is another place. And it's filled with people that they don't want to be around. And UW-Madison does not have the best reputation. So I think unless those short courses start moving around and getting out of the Madison bubble or even the Dane County bubble, where they serve a very specific group of people or a group of people with a very specific ideology that feel comfortable in that kind of a setting, I think we kind of lost it. I think we really need to start thinking about how we can program outside of Dane County, and I've been to most of the Dane County programs, and they're high quality, and I don't think that they don't have direct applicability around the state, but we need to find a way for people to disassociate them from UW-Madison and what they think is going on in Dane County, and start getting things more like what Ryan was doing. And I agree with Dennis completely that the camaraderie and that mutual support and that having people to bounce things off of and to ask questions of is really, really valuable. So I think if there's a way to maybe do one of these short courses up in Green Bay or up in another area and take that group that goes through a short course and make them a cohort of people that can get together, even if it's a phone conference or if it's a video chat or something once a month, then I think that has tremendous potential.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Kristen, Kathy Kramer has found in her surveys that people trust Extension. That's our heritage, is that we are Extension. People trust their neighbor who's the local Extension educator. And that's what I was trying to get at the July 1st. What might change in July is that this can be part of Extension when we're merged and identified clearly as Extension. And I'm hoping we can still be blue out in the counties. We've always been blue. But that's just my opinion. But also, Dennis, the farmer mentors have been a tradition in Extension as well, with the retired farmers taking on the next generation. We're losing those people though. We're getting to the end of those. It's time. Time to take advantage of those.
And we have the Center for Dairy Profitability that's doing the mentorship program. I think it's just with dairy producers, but there might be other ones. But basically, they find mentor farmers who are willing to train and mentor other people into being, commercial farmers, to be able to do it as a business, as their livelihood. And I think that has a lot of value too.
Paul Mitchell also, Dennis, was I'm losing track of who's still here, but he had been focusing on the economics of those specialty crops so that information was more readily available for making those decisions.
As it relates to the Dairy Profitability Center model, Claire Strader, Julie Dawson, and myself had a good conversation maybe a year and a half now ago about replicating that model for small scale sustainable growers and having that sort of mentorship model and looking at different grants. I think there's a lot out there that would fit supporting that through the USDA. But unfortunately our time capacity to organize that grant never came to fruition. But I think it's something that's really worth looking into because it does seem to be a very successful, useful model. And what we discussed was pairing that with kind of formal classes with a local community or technical college that potentially could even get recognized credit for taking these different courses. And then there would be the networking aspect of it amongst the different farmers going through this course. And then kind of the long term would be pairing the participants with what we would call our veteran farmers or farmer experts, experienced farmers, where they could get maybe a certain number of free hours of support from these training farmers in exchange for their time, kind of teaching them the ropes of real life farming. And then also potentially these farmers in training could have a small piece of land at the sites that they're placed at, where they could manage their own little micro farm there to be able to start practicing what they've learned and selling at local markets or figuring out who their markets or consumer base is.
I'm just going to throw out that I think we do ourselves a disservice when we separate sustainable growers from conventional growers. I think that when we work specifically with sustainable growers, it gives us that oh, they just work with liberals thing. Just from and I think that if we could have more conversations or more education that showed conventional farmers sustainable practices, and not call it specifically training for sustainable, maybe we can get more of these sustainability practices in conventional farms. Because I think that like cover crops and some of the other things that folks who are sustainable use on a more regular basis would be really valuable to conventional farmers, but they're not necessarily going to look at it because you called it sustainable. You know what I mean? Like it's a dirty word.
And pollinators are a good argument for that, Kristen.
I want to ask.
Pollinators.
I want to just ask a question about this very technology. I mean, whenever I bring up video conferencing, people say, "Oh, they don't have broadband everywhere in the state." But all of our cities have broadband. So I wonder if we can just think about using this so that people in Milwaukee can show up together and mingle in person, and maybe people in Green Bay can do the same thing, and any other cities where you can herd people, or they can sit at home and then bring the experts, because I do think while there might be an anti-Madison thing, and I totally understand it, I know a lot of farmers who respect the heck out of some of our integrated specialists, Jed Colhoun or Aaron Silva or Julie Dawson or anyone else, and to have the opportunity to have a faculty member from College of Ag speak to them directly, even if it's via video, would probably be pretty cool. And we don't have to drive. No one has to drive to Madison ever. So, and I guess I'm just throwing it out there. If we ever want to pilot, we don't have to wait for grants to do some of this. We have a lot of the knowledge. We could just start and sort of prove demand, and then maybe look for internal funding, because if we get dependent on grants, every year we're chasing grants. And I think what we really need to do is convince the administration that a certain amount of money needs to go to this. And the best way to prove that is to put together a program and drum out the farmers and show that they're attending. Sorry.
I agree, Greg, and I think maybe the distinguishing thing to note there is that we're building the group or the network of farmers from within the community that we're working with, and then from there reaching out to our experts in Madison, rather than starting with our experts in Madison and welcoming all farmers to come and hear from them, so that there's trust and relationships that are formed starting with that particular community, and then we reach out and utilize the expertise of our state specialist.
I agree with that. And also I just wanted to add that there are farmers who have 20, 30 years of experience, and the reason they're profitable is because they do have good internet. That's one reason, is there's a lot of farmers that are very connected to the internet, and they could sit in their own farm in Vernon County and speak to urban growers in Milwaukee or Green Bay. And I've already spoken with one. David Perkins would be real happy to speak to urban farmers. So I'm offering, if you all want to do a program, I'll provide this background technical support, and I'll get better at it. You guys can come up with the curriculum. We got plenty of farmers and specialists who we can go to if we make it easy for them. If they don't have to drive, they're going to be all the more willing to do a program here and there.
I'm just going to throw out, so for the Master Gardener program, we pre-record the educational part, and then we get together at a specified time for the chat part. And I think that really works well, because we've had a lot of crashes and technical problems and people not getting on. And that way they can join just via phone if they don't have a good internet connection for that chat part. They can try to download the YouTube video or whatever when it's most convenient and when they have best service. Or I just think there's some tweaks and ways to go about this. And the other thing is if we record it, then our specialists don't have to do that same presentation every single year. And it's accessible for the folks who just want to listen in January when they have downtime or something. I think that there's some value to recording things and putting them out there and using those recordings as tools as part of a training.
It's a good idea. It's also good to have that live, assuming the internet's working, to have that live Q&A with the specialists too. So I think we can do a mix. Anytime we can record, well, every time we do a program, we can record it, and then the next time we don't have to tap them again if it's nice and concise, and you can even edit it down and cut out the waste. I mean, I've actually asked Ryan, so Ryan mentioned this SARE grant, this compost grant, and he's 25% on that grant. It goes through end of September. And, what I basically said to him is, Ryan, there's a lot of things you could do for the project, but if we want to grow demand for compost in Milwaukee area, one thing we could do is grow the number of urban farmers, grow their scale and educate them about compost. But I basically said, Ryan, if you can pull a group of farmers together in Milwaukee who want programming and you can organize that, let's do it. Let's start January. Let's start in January with our first program. And it won't be perfect, but let's do it. And if we're going to do it anyway, and if we use this technology, let's open it up to Green Bay. We don't have to. I'm a shoot, go forward. We could do this by January 2018. We could pilot some things in January 2018. It's just a matter of putting our brains together, divvying out the work, keeping it simple.
And I'll just mention, so we're starting with having a conversation amongst the real stakeholders of this initiative, which are the actual farmers. So I've invited 7 small-scale farmers that I would consider to be successful in different capacities to have a meeting either right before the holidays or afterwards, depending on what their availability is from the doodle poll, to talk about what the most pressing needs are, to be sure that we meet those needs and we talk about the information or questions that are most relevant to them. And so we're moving forward with that, and the goal is to have the first workshop at the end of January, at the end of January.
And one guy, Chris Dwyer, was already gung-ho to kind of sketch out a curriculum, and I think, Kristen, probably with a few cups of coffee, you could scratch out a curriculum in a half hour, of what farmers needed. I mean, obviously we could spend more time on that, but I think I would predict there'd be a lot of consensus on what sort of topics are needed in Green Bay or needed in rural. If we wanted to open it up to rural, we could. Certainly suburban and peri-urban. I think the curriculum it requires some thought. But as soon as we have that, just an outline, then it's just a short step to think about who could talk to it, and we could have a whole program by the end of by early January.
And I don't know that we can't just lift a lot of John Hendrickson's stuff. Would he let us videotape stuff? Or, I mean, I know he doesn't want us to kind of cut into but I'm not sure a lot of the people that we would be serving would overlap with his clientele. And maybe he would just let us maybe tape certain parts or base our curriculum off of his or augment it, and he could use some of our stuff and we could use some of his. But I don't see any point in recreating the wheel. I mean, John's program's been running for God longer than I've been here, so probably at least 20 years. And it's been successful and he's continued it. So I think he's got a lot of the nuts and bolts figured out. And for us to tweak that for a more urban audience, I mean, it's already tweaked for small sustainable, so I don't think it would take a ton to tweak it for urban.
I've known John a very long time, and I could reach out to him, and just talk frank, and he probably will have some concerns about his income stream or whatever, but we can talk about it.
Yeah, and I think before we move forward, that conversation should take place. I mean, I definitely don't want to step on his toes. I consider him part of the team. So I think it's important to kind of keep him in the loop and kind of get some feedback from him too.
Well, as Rhonda says, in 6 months, we're going to be part of UW-Madison and CIS. There's always been this kind of barrier or firewall between us and CIS, and that's gone in 6 months. So we need to figure out how and they do a lot of outreach. I mean, they do extension work. So we have to figure out how we work together, and it would be we could take a few steps in that direction.
Brown County, what do you guys think about piloting some sort of small scale beginning farmer training in some capacity in the future?
I think that's a great idea, and we are kind of having a little bit of brief discussion about it. We are very still in the early phase right now. Say, I don't know whether January 2018 we can able to meet that goal. But I certainly agree with you that the topic is great. Having a 101 type of topics on urban farming, on those kind of level would be really great. I'm sure it will attract a lot of people. We are right now in the early phase of even gathering the data, who are all the urban farmers, their contact information, and those kind of stuff. So I'm kind of hoping, like probably as probably in mid to late spring, maybe or even in the middle of next year would be a right time for us. But probably by the time we would have actually gathered all the reports and done our need assessment, and we would have an established steering committee put together, and then probably we might think about having this type of pilot type of program through video conferencing or even face-to-face type of thing. But January 2018 is too early for us.
Right. Yeah, it seems like Milwaukee County, we're ready. We can forge forward with doing this work. We've got this nice resource cushion from the SARE project, and we've got the farmers on board. And then we can kind of learn some lessons and share those lessons with Brown County and Dane and Waukesha, and hopefully start these other pilot programs in other counties moving into the fall of 2018, winter of 2019. Does that seem feasible?
And even if it's just occurs in Milwaukee County, I would encourage us to use this technology. Our excuse could be if we have someone on the program who can't be there in person, a presenter, and then automatically we're using this tool, and we're recording in case there's a presentation that we could reuse, and just getting ourselves comfortable with cameras in the room and speaking to people who aren't in the room. So, I'm gung-ho about this. I've been waiting for this technology for a very long time, and we're all going to get it soon. I have it right now temporarily, but we're all going to have it in a matter of a month or two, probably a month.
You're talking about the Zoom video conferencing technology. Right? Yeah.
If possibly even some training to go with it. It's possible. No.
We've got 5 minutes. What do you want to accomplish, Ryan?
Any final thoughts about piloting this kind of beginning farmer networking workshop training program?
I have a comment quick.
Sure.
So, the way I'm approaching this is basically from a organizational development lens right now. Like, what could this look like for us as part of the community and regional food system program in the next, let's say 2 years? So as you're developing this programming, if you could think about how this becomes replicable, or how this becomes more of a part of a long-standing way we interact with communities and education we offer, and so that it might be initially Milwaukee and Waukesha and Brown County, but there are other urban areas around the state that would probably want to be included in this, have access to it. And as we develop research and best practices and those things, I don't think that any one of us has the time to do that on their own. So if we could think about it as a program, and then hopefully we can resource it as a program, either buying people's time out, or I'm not sure what that could look like. But I just want to ask if you all would give some thought to that, because I do want to take advantage of the opportunity we have right now to put down on paper what we do need as far as resources and personnel, and why the programming is needed statewide, and what exists already, and all of those kind of things.
It's a great point. Okay, so I think, Greg, if you want to put up the agenda once more on the screen. Right before we sign off, if we just want to quickly go down this list under item number 4, assessing educational needs. Read through this. Are any of these letters particularly important or relevant within your counties or the work that you're doing? Is it worth highlighting any of these to say, yes, but we definitely need more resources, and further looking into any of these bullet points? More so than the other. I mean, I think they're all needs, they're relevant needs, but
I don't know if anyone else would have the same need, but conversations that I'm having are the strategies for processing. As we look at farm to school, getting local food in schools, just processing facilities for doing that. And we just have, you know, when new ideas and new initiatives come up, there's a lot of things that a lot of people that spring up with their ideas, but they're not working together to make it happen. And that is kind of the case around the processing and storing and preserving of local foods.
And I'll just throw out, you can't even talk about that without talking about the food safety and the federal regulations around food safety now.
Right. That's part of it. Big part of it.
Yeah, there's a huge glass ceiling for local producers now when it comes to the Food Safety Modernization Act.
Ryan, I think this list gets to Aaron's point. I mean, toward the end of our conversation a few minutes ago, we were really honing in on food production, you know, and really we were mostly, I think, talking about outdoor, urban, peri-urban food production. And I think that's good. I think that's a good focus to have some training programs on. But to Aaron's point, the team or the program could also do simultaneously programs around food processing and food safety in urban areas or wherever there's a kitchen, wherever there's interest.
Same with the whole system, entire system.
Yeah, all aspects of the system. I think once we nail down this technology and learn how to program well in it and build audiences that use it, we can touch on food waste. Food waste is a huge topic in all cities, and so every single aspect of the food system that our team's all about can have a programming component.
That was the other thing I was thinking about, was the food waste and the composting of it, and just the recycling and using it and repurposing. There's a huge, I think Dennis kind of mentioned, it's just a whole composting. It's an underutilized, I don't know, programming area plus opportunity for maybe business development, I think he was saying.
Related to that, when I had a conversation with some couple of growers in our county, they're more also curious about improving the farming methods and how do they diversify their farming techniques. That's always been an interest among them. They heard about all this aquaponics, hydroponics, and things like that, and they want to know how to get started with that. What are some of the resources available and those kind of things. And I also talked to some other local growers in the city of Green Bay too. They also further want to fine tune actually some of these farming methods too. So there are some, I do see some needs in that farming methods too. But at the same time, it also drags me into a difficult situation, because when I start interacting with these people, I see in a conflict of interest that too. In terms of, I see some conventional type of grower, and then there are people who are more strictly organic persons, and then there is people who are in the middle of both of these things. And and there are a bit of a politics going on in that too, but people saying, my farming method is the most safest way and not yours, kind of like that too. They are trying to bridge all this network and trying to understand their needs becoming a little bit more complex sometimes.
There was a beautiful resource for that in Wisconsin, the Northern Wisconsin Aquaculture Center. But Jim Hild was working with Iowa, and he started working with all of the Great Lakes states on aquaponics. And for sure that must be resourced now with the Michigan office, the NCRCRD, is that the right acronym for the resource in Michigan? Aaron, do you know?
Can you ask that again, Rhonda? I didn't hear the last part.
The North Central office for extension programs used to be in Iowa, and it's moved to Michigan now. I think the acronym is NCRCRD.
Oh, I am not sure. That is one acronym, the North Central Region
Community Resource Development.
Yeah.
Well, it brings up another point, Ron, is I've been thinking about Chicago. That's the other place Wisconsinites love to hate.
Well, but they might have those land use policies in place because they, use their neighbors' plots that, aren't available, and they've had to make ordinances for all of that.
Well, there's been a lot of innovation, and I think it's going to continue in Chicago. So it's a little, it's not a long drive if we wanted to go down and learn about other things, but we could bring some of them up here via video. And I'm thinking of Ken Dunn. I've mentioned him before, but he claims to be one of the first and few truly urban farmers who are profitable, who don't depend on any grants, and who's sustaining his livelihood. And he says he couldn't do it without combining production and a food waste composting venture in one operation. He seemed like a brilliant guy, and he's getting older. The sooner we get him, the better. But I'm just saying it's an example. If we think of other states that we want to hear about, and we could bring them in via this technology and be on a program.
Okay, so I think
Go ahead.
Wrapping up, that I would just say, I think the foundation for all of this is developing these regionally based farmer education networks, and utilizing their insight and what their interests are to help guide us in how we choose what we choose to cover educationally. But I definitely think that in creating these network platforms, that will provide a great opportunity to cover food waste and to cover processing. But starting with the network and building relationships and trust amongst the farmers, and kind of letting them take as much to have as much engagement and buy-in as possible, and then from there, figuring out specifically what is it that they want to learn about, whether that's as it relates to just the growing of food, and then expanding into processing food waste, and so on and so forth, and then tapping all these different resources that we have within the university system and within our networks that are all across the Midwest and across even the country. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
I'm just going to throw out, it might be really useful to have a resource inventory. You know what I mean? Who do we have? I think that's one of the biggest problems we have in Extension. We don't know who's working in what and what kind of work they're doing. There might be a ton of people out there that could support this work and tap into them if we can just get them on a list and have a list of who specializes in this stuff. And I think that goes to, if we have a good solid list of resources, this doesn't look like a startup program. It doesn't look like a program where it's really needy and we're trying to get something off the ground during a time of transition. It's just about mobilizing the resources to a centralized issue. And I think that helps kind of support the idea of urban ag being something we need to focus. And I'm not sure if we want to call it urban ag again. I wonder if there's another way to term it so it has more statewide appeal, because I think whatever we're doing in Milwaukee County can go to Black River Falls or go to all sorts of places without any changes whatsoever. You just maybe change like the marketing piece, or you maybe change this little piece, and it's just how you package it. So I wonder if there's a way to kind of sell this and move this forward as a small farmer development program with an urban component and a rural component or something like that, and just have, we're already doing this work, we do it in this ways, we just got to pull everybody into a group and start doing it in a collaborative, thoughtful way so that we can all move forward together in some kind of, some kind of a way where it's very measurable and deliberate.
Didn't you just say it? Small farmer development program? That sounds
Well,
good to me.
I already copyrighted that, so you'd have to pay me for the rights. Yeah.
I vote we give her a couple bucks and a lot.
Are you all comfortable with Google Drive? Could we start a Google Doc and share a drive and share a folder and start putting stuff in there? Those who are on this call.
Sure. One other thought, the more we talk about this, some other thoughts are coming to mind, and this is from the market end. We realized in our extended market seasons that the growers don't know about which varieties to plant for longer storage, so that we have more local foods year round, and that was a gap that we identified. And so then we connected with the technical college, and they weren't teaching that either. So they're not learning this, but that made me think about the technical colleges, and here we have the program in sustainable ag. So should we be building connections also as we do this, or not, was my question. But that's definitely a gap of education that people, I guess, need and would help them economically and would help increase the supply year round.
And that's something we're supposed to be doing. So this is an extension.
And I'll just throw out that we did a lot of that education in relation to Hoops House and season extension and storability probably about 10 years ago. It was a huge wave, and I think it just moved through. So I'm sure we could dig that stuff up and do it again.
Mm-hmm. And it was also included in that which varieties to plant, which is probably changed from them.
There's annual field trials.
I know we haven't done our needs assessment, and I haven't seen it, so I don't know if that's included or not, but the word on the street is that that's a really number one need.
And I think we already have the resources available to make those recommendations. So it'd just be about doing it again, because the varieties change as time moves on. So I'm sure the recommendations from 10 years ago are a little bit dated. Mm-hmm. And it has to do with what your storage resources are, what temperature you can keep stuff in, all that kind of stuff. But honestly, we used to tap into Illinois for that. Mosba Kashad, I think, he does a lot of cold storage and arresting disease development and during cold storage and how to best hold on to stuff. So we used him a ton back then. So I think that would still be a good relationship too.
Minnesota does what grows north of the Beaver Dam line, but Brown County might be its own microsystem. With the Great Lakes. So that might be. I know there's an experiment station up there. They might be doing that work.
I know Cornell University has put together a lot of resources in the vegetable varieties, from disease-resistant processing and those kind of things, and they've been constantly updating those information.
Yeah.
I mean, sharing that resources to my master gardeners, especially if they're asking for disease-resistant varieties and things like that. So that might be another piece of resource to think about.
As we look at timeline, though, I mean, if we're recommending certain varieties so that we have an extended season for selling, that's something that would need to be happening, when people are buying their seeds in January and February.
And USDA did have resources for hoop houses for getting an early start too. I don't know if they still do. Who knows what's going on at USDA.
And this came up too because the technical college isn't teaching this. I think they don't have the knowledge. So I'm sorry I thought about this so late, but I'm really kind of pushing it because it's been the topic, among growers and markets and people running markets and problems with running the markets, because they have to have more crafts because there aren't enough people who have the ability to have food, a little bit later.
I just want to back up a little bit, just thinking of sort of politics or how we roll something out in terms of partnerships, not even thinking of technical colleges, but just CIAS. If we brand something right out of the bat right now and call it Small Farmer Development Program, we either got to try to talk CIS and Dane County's programs into coming under that umbrella right away, or they also could just sort of see us as competing because they do small farmer development stuff. And so I guess we need to talk to those folks. But one way that we can sort of get out of the gate and not worry as much about turf is to maintain an urban focus for a little while because no one's taking that territory.
Greg, would you define CIS? I'm not familiar with the term.
Center for Integrated Agricultural Systems. They've been on campus for 30 years. They got a lot of backing.
I didn't hear the A. We didn't hear the A. We just heard CIS. So CIAS. Okay.
So it's just a thought, Kristen. I don't know what you think, but I mean, until we talk to Julie and Aaron and John and Claire, until we talk to those four people, I think we just need to be careful about claiming we're going to do a small farmer program.
I don't care either way. Or you can just slap UW Extension Milwaukee County on the front of it. You know what I mean? To make it a county program.
Right.
I don't have any vested interest in. I just throwing stuff out.
Yeah. It's just a thought. We just got to be careful. These are partnerships that are now going to start this summer and they're going to last forever. So we just got to approach them slowly.
And we'll get more information on how we're doing this merger too as the year progresses.
Yeah, I think the sooner that we can talk with him, the better. If we can speak with them in the next beginning of the new year so that they're part of the launching of this programming and they feel like they were fully briefed on what it is that we're doing, the better, rather than waiting till later.
Well, some of them were invited to this call for sure. And then I'm not sure why Dane County isn't represented in this meeting. If they ever got back to you, Ryan, but CIS wanted to be on this call and we said no. So if we want to do a follow-up call in early January, we could invite them. Yeah,
in Dane County, they had some sort of big event that Claire and Julia were both working on. And then Carrie, we know this date didn't work for her. We moved it around so that the Brown County folks could be able to attend. So for next steps, starting this resource inventory, we'll get a document going, I think via Google Docs, or we could just, I think that's the easiest for everyone. Everyone is familiar with that. It's pretty straightforward. And then I guess the next question that you hinted at, Greg, would be, do we want to look at reconvening for maybe a little bit shorter follow-up meeting, 60 minutes or so, sometime in January to see where we're at, or waiting until February?
I think early January can be a good time to get people together. There's, that first week, late in the first week.
Is everyone else okay with that?
I'm not around, but go ahead without me.
Who was that?
Kristen.
Kristen,
Yeah.
How about
Since
the second
there's
one?
not a lot going on, I usually just don't show up.
Nice.
You could join us from home in your, casual morning.
I'll be in Florida, but I could. It's not completely off the table.
They still have internet there.
Yeah. My kids will be there, so that's not exactly the most conducive.
How about the following week, the second week of January?
Yeah, I'll be around. But again, if the first week works, I mean, put the doodle out with the first week, and I will make an effort to attend if I can. I mean, we're not like, we're there to relax, so I got time.
Does anybody have any beekeeping programs part of this? I'm just wondering if that's I know Fond du Lac does some program, a couple one-day ones, but does anybody do any comprehensive beekeeping? Or no?
There's a curriculum for 4-H youth.
Because I know
Our Master Gardeners program we're still offering a beginner's beekeeping program, but it's more geared for general publics and gardeners. And plus, we have a Brown County Beekeepers Association, and through the association, they regularly, have some monthly meetings and provides update to some regular beekeepers in the county.
Heather Swan just did a book talk with her new book. It's called Where Bees Thrive, and that's an amazing resource. She got that published through Penn State Press. If you want to take a look at it, Where Bees Thrive, Heather Swan, Penn State Press.
Because right now I attach myself to the Bee Lab in Minnesota, and that just seems like we should in Wisconsin have some opportunity for research-based information. I troll on the Waukesha, Milwaukee Beekeepers Association site, and it's really scary, actually, the information that these people give to each other. So I'm wondering if somewhere down the line that we look at that as being an opportunity.
Ask for as an ask for resources needed.
All right. Any final parting words? Pressing?
Thank you.
No. All right. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll be in touch via email.
Thank you all.
We tried.
Wait 1 second, Brown County. Can you stay on for a second?
Sure.
Sure.
I'll stop recording.
Okay. I just want